All right, welcome back again, everybody. This will be the next to last video, at least in the persuasion series. They'll have another one after that with planning your lecture that will follow. But this one is going to be about Monroe's motivated sequence. There's going to be two on Monroe's. This one will introduce you to Monroe's, give you the background and how it works. Then the next one will be fairly brief, and it will include some links to other videos, commercials that I want you to watch, and then flip back and forth between the videos. So I'll explain that as we get closer. Let's jump back to our PowerPoint. Again, the PowerPoint is up on, that's not it, Blackboard, and it's this one that we've been using. So by the way, I think in the end of the last video, I mentioned we would talk about delivery. We're going to actually do that together in person when we get back, so that won't be included here. But Monroe's motivated sequence is an organizational strategy that is really effective when it comes to trying to persuade groups of people, especially groups that you're not really sure about what motivates them most. It's sort of like the modern equivalency in my mind of the rhetorical triangle, because that structure using the three was a source of strength. It is a source of strength, you know. And again, if you leave one out or make one weak, that's as strong as your argument is. Monroe's has 5 steps, and if you follow these in the order, the way that he intended, it is very, very effective. Now, just as a little background here, the person who we're talking about's name's Alan Monroe. This came out in the mid-1930s. Alan Monroe was a professor at Purdue University, and he was working on a sales pitch. So his area was psychology, and he was trying to figure out what sorts of persuasive messages and structures would motivate people to buy things. Then the U.S. government contacted him. They heard about his research, and they asked if he would do some work for them, helping motivate parents to get their children back into the doctors for vaccines and for health care. You have to remember, at this point, we're coming out of the Great Depression, and folks had really not taken their kids to the doctor because they just couldn't afford it, or they couldn't get there. They didn't have means. I mean, this was a bad time for our country. And so the idea here is we've got to get kids back to the doctor so that we have, future population. And so Monroe came up with this, essentially. Now, it's changed a bit over the years, but it comes down to 5 steps. You see them there. First, you grab their attention. Then you explain a problem or a need, what's wrong. Then you give them a way to fix that problem or satisfy that need. Fourth, visualization is when you describe with words. Now, it doesn't have to do with pictures, but visualization is telling the audience how things will be better and different if they solve their problem with your plan. And then the last one there is call to action. And that's something the audience can do right now, not in the future, but right now, to start the process that you describe in your solution. So let's go through each step in a little bit of detail here. First off, you have an attention getter. And please note, this is not much different, if any, than the attention getting devices we've already talked about. We've talked about statistics and facts, especially things that are going to shock. We did the 1 out of 3 college students at Grand Valley has an STD shocking thing. Questions can still work, show of hands questions and rhetorical questions. And as mentioned before, stories are really just the way to go for a persuasive presentation. So, since this is advanced speaking, if you just are struggling with a story, I'm okay if you use a really good display of statistics or facts, or you ask some really thought-provoking questions or combinations. But mostly, I would like us to try to use stories here. Now, keep in mind, for a story to be an attention getter, it could be an actual story. It can be real. The best stories that you can tell are often those that are real and that happen to you. Now, if you have one that works for your topic and you don't mind to share it, great. But what if you don't? What if you don't have one, or you don't want to share your story? That's okay too. You can also find other stories. Go and look at news articles, Google some stuff, find people telling their story about something that's related to your topic, and then tell us that person's story. Give them credit for it, cite it. It's probably going to be a source. The third option you have is to make up a story. Now, hear me. You cannot make up a story and say it's real, it's true, it's about you, it's about someone you know. You don't have to say this is a fake story, but you just can start telling it like it's fiction. Once upon a time, or however you want to do it. Imagine living in a situation where this was your life. Well, that happened to Denise. Because the idea here, no matter how you do this story, add details, whether they're made up or if they're real. Again, making it up only for what's known as a hypothetical illustration, not for a facsimile of a true story. But tell stories with details. Give characters names or tell us their names. Use thick descriptions instead of just, there was a woman named Denise, she had some problems, and yeah, she needs some help. Right? So I've talked about this before, I think, but President Obama was really good at this. He would tell stories about people he met, and he would not just say things like, I was traveling, I met a woman who has 2 daughters. This woman's working 2 jobs and still can't pay her bills. We got to do something as the government to help. I mean, that's a story, but most people don't care about a woman with 2 kids that's working 2 jobs. So he wouldn't do that, of course. He would tell the story with much more rich detail. So it would sound more like, I was traveling around the country last week. I was in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I met a woman named Donna. Donna is a 28-year-old mother of 2 beautiful young girls named Bee and Yancey. As we were standing there, Donna was telling me about how hard it is for her working 2 jobs and choosing what bills to pay and which child that she might buy a gift for, different holidays. And it broke my heart, honestly. That kind of story. And he's describing the girls and they're holding a baby doll. And those rich details connect with humans because we like to imagine it as people talk about it. And so it's easy to say to a woman who has 2 kids and works hard, sorry, can't help you. But this is Donna with 2 beautiful daughters. This is a 28-year-old hardworking single mom. It's harder to tell those people, nope, not going to help you, than it is to have some, skeleton outline of a person that we're just hoping people can connect with. The other idea about a story here, and this is really important, when you're using a story, keep in mind that you still need to start with your attention getter, end with your closure, and those 2 things should be connected. So, right, if it's a question, for example, you might ask it and at the end come back and, say at the beginning, I asked you this question. Well, now you may have more information to think about it in a new way. Fine. For a story, the way you want to do this is to start out at the beginning with the attention getter. Tell us a story till we get to a climactic, cliffhanging moment. If some drama is happening and it could really change the outcome of the story, great. Stop the story, give the speech. Then at the very end, come back and say things like, you're probably wondering what happened to whoever you were talking about. Best example I've ever heard of this. This is a true story. So come back over for a minute. I was judging the forensics competition, public speaking forensics competition in Tennessee. This is the state championship in 2000 and I'll say probably about 2009, 2010. And so we were in the final round. So this is for the state championship, the top extemporaneous speaker. And the last person was getting ready to go. And the speeches had been really good. Everybody used a story, but this guy got up, and I'll give you the quick version. He said, not so long ago, a family immigrated to America from Mexico. They came here chasing the American dream. The father wanted a better life for his family, and he worked 2 different jobs so that he could achieve that. The mother, of course, helped support the family, and she also worked 2 jobs, and that left very little time for either of them to be with their young 8-year-old son. But the boy understood that this was the pursuit of the dream. In fact, he was so inspired, he decided he wanted to get involved with this idea. So he saw a rusty lawnmower in the neighbor's backyard and asked the man if one day he could use it, if he could try to make it work. And the guy said, yeah, it hasn't ran in years, kid. If you can make it work, you can have it. So the boy took it home, and over the next couple months, he and his dad, when they had a moment, would tinker with it. And they finally got it working. And one day, the little boy started going around the neighborhood, just right within view of his own home, and asking if he could mow lawns. And he was little; he was 8 years old, but the neighbors really loved him, and so they would let him mow the front lawn and give him a couple bucks. So one day, he was out and he was cutting this grass, and as he made the final turn with the lawnmower, he set it down on its wheels. He heard a loud pop. He fell down, and suddenly he felt pain all over his body. He looked down at the bottom of his right leg, and his foot was missing. The blade of the mower had come disconnected and severed his foot right above his ankle. Of course, he was screaming, and the neighbor came running out and tried to stop the bleeding and got him to the hospital with his foot. His mother met them there. A doctor examined the boy and came out, found his mother, and said, "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to be able to save your son's foot." And the mother said, "I don't believe that's the truth." Hi, my name is whatever, and I'm going to tell you today about truth. Today I'll talk about scientific truth, personal truth, whatever his 3 main points were. Gives a fine speech, but everybody's like, "What? The little boy?" So you're probably wondering what happened to the little boy. Well, just at the time when the mother and doctor were talking, it was shift change, and another doctor came in, having heard about the boy, and asked if he could give a second opinion. The mother agreed, and that doctor came back with a different opinion. He said, "Ma'am, I can save your son's foot. Not only that, I can attach it and he won't have full use of it, but he will be complete and it will heal if that's what you want." And then the speaker, the guy, the student, steps out from behind the podium and said, "I'm so glad my mother did that for me back then because I'm still standing on my own 2 feet in front of you today. And that's the truth." Right? So real powerful kind of story. Now, me being me, this is also a true story. I didn't believe him. And you can't make up a story as that part of your speech. Like I just explained to you, it has to be a real story. You can't say it's about you or that it's real. And so I didn't think he was telling the truth. And I asked to see the scar, and sure enough, he had one. And I was terribly embarrassed, and I was never invited to judge again. But the bigger picture here, what a great attention-getting device. So going back over here now to our PowerPoint, keep in mind you need to grab our attention. If you don't do it early, it's hard to do it later. So make sure that you've done that. Try to use a story and split it at a cliffhanging moment that works. Also, practice the story for time. I've done this for a long time. If I use the same examples in class, sometimes I can do it in 2 minutes. Sometimes it's 12 minutes. And I don't know why it varies so much. So practice so it's consistent. All right, next up here, you need to explain the problem at hand. Now, most of the time, problems that you're going to discuss are pretty clear. If you talk about things like, I don't know, climate change and political turmoil, and we've got wars and famine and these obvious things that are bad. Yeah, we need to solve those. Other times, people, maybe they don't realize that a problem is real, and you may need to give them details as to why a problem is real. So if you have a situation where you're describing a problem, answer some of these questions. Tell them what the problem is, but then why is that a problem? For example, if you think about climate change even, let's say that you own a heat pump air conditioning company. Long term, yeah, this is not good for the world. However, short term, while you're on this planet, you can make a lot of money putting in air conditioners for people. So is climate change a problem? I don't know how you would view that. But let's say that those are the folks you have to convince. Yeah, it is a problem because the world is getting way too hot. Yeah, but I make money from it. Okay, next question. For whom is this a problem? It doesn't matter how much money you have if it's so hot you can't survive and it's not going to be an inhabitable planet. Okay, yeah, but that's going to happen in a long time. I'll be dead by then. That gets you to the next question. Well, how bad is the problem? Well, you may see these changes in your own lifetime or however that might work. And then start thinking about what could or should be done. So for your topics, if you're thinking about, for example, like videotaping the police, why is it a problem? Well, videotaping the police isn't a problem. If you're talking about prior restraint, that's the problem, right? The problem is police officers or public officials trying to prevent the public from videotaping them or trying to hem them up, get them in trouble, charge them with some sort of a crime like obstruction or interference or hindering because they are videotaping the police. Well, people will say, well, I don't videotape the police. That doesn't apply to me. Well, yeah, but any threat to our rights like that is a problem for all of us. We can't wait until something we like to do is threatened. We have to understand that this is a problem for everyone because it's a problem for anyone in a place where we're supposed to have free press, free speech. How bad is this problem? Well, some states are handling it better than others, but there are examples of people being arrested and convicted of things like hindering or obstruction when all they were doing was videotaping police peacefully. And so what can and should be done? Well, maybe getting rid of qualified immunity or changing the laws so that this makes sense. That's where the next step comes in. Here's how you make that thing happen. So let's say it's getting rid of qualified immunity, which, by the way, if you're not familiar, is police can often get out of any consequences for their actions if they can argue that they were trying to do something positive. They had the best intentions, and that's why they should be immune from punishment. So if we wanted to say we want to get rid of that, we need a plan to get us there. Note this, please, at the top, step-by-step plan. No matter what you tell us to do, give us a step-by-step plan. This is where that logical solution comes in. You want to really think about using a strategy here, be thorough, make sure it's clear. So I've not thought about this until this very moment, but if I was going to try to get rid of qualified immunity, you would need to change some laws. Now, you don't have to go and watch, the Schoolhouse Rock or review your civics class material. The idea here, we all know how laws change generally, or we have an idea, I hope. But some basic steps might be, we need to, step one, raise awareness of this problem by taking a presence on social media, let's say. Second step, we need to start a petition that will also popularize through social media because we need to get some signatures so that lawmakers will take a look at this seriously. Once we get those signatures, third step is to take them to our like-minded lawmakers and encourage them to bring legislation forward that will take away qualified immunity in most situations. And then fourth, we need the government to do its process where we vote in the two houses of the Congress, whether it's state level or federal level, and the governor or the president then can sign this bill and make it a law. Right? Those are the steps. Now, you don't have to be an expert to walk us through that, but those are the steps. Now, as long as they make sense, that's what we're trying to accomplish here. I'll give you an example of one that didn't work once. A guy was trying to talk about we have too much trash, like pollution, landfills, that kind of stuff. So we should launch our trash into space. I mean, is it great? No, but it's off the planet and it'll be out of the way. Okay. When he walked us through that, he said, okay, we're going to gather trash up in these locations. Landfills can double as launch sites. We'll collect things and, put them in this, cylinder kind of thing, and we'll launch them into space. Well, one student at the end asked a question because he was in the know. I guess he was a science major. Asked, how much it costs to launch a pound of material into space? And it's something like $25,000 for 1 pound. And he's talking about putting cubic tons of this stuff in space. And so if you have a big step missing, like how do we pay for this? That's a problem. The plan I just described really doesn't require much money. Everything requires some, but it's not a primary step. If I had said we need to file lawsuits in states where they still have qualified immunity, well, now we got to hire a team of attorneys, and we would need a plan to pay for that. But that wasn't my plan because I didn't want to have to explain how to pay for that. So, if you have a plan that you want to work out, do it. Just make sure it makes sense. Give us step-by-step ways that we can go about your plan. Once you explain the problem and how to solve it, this is when you tell us how things will be so much better. Go back and revisit the need and say, look, I told you here's the problem. I gave you this step-by-step plan and now it's solved it. And here's the outcomes you can expect. Another way to think of this is sort of the benefits or these positive outcomes to your plan. So if you think about listing off that problem, make sure that you have a visualization point that corresponds. So I'll show you an example of this in a minute, but if you said qualified immunity is a problem because police don't get punished for their bad deeds, and it makes two sort of systems of consequence in the legal process for citizens and for law enforcement. If those were the two problems you described, then go ahead and tell us, after you used my plan to solve this, we no longer will have police officers getting off with committing crimes. They will have to answer for their actions. And it will be a much fairer system of justice for all of us here in this country, because now if you do a crime, no matter if you're an officer or a civilian, the outcome, the consequences are the same, right? So that's what you're doing. You're describing the problem again, basically, but now look, I fixed it. Here's how these things are going to work the way they're supposed to. Last step is this call to action. So I've got on there the very first step, because what it is, it's the very first step to your solution. So for mine, if you remember, I said that the first thing we should do was raise awareness by starting a social media campaign or creating social media awareness. That's what I want to do as a first step. So what can I then ask my audience to do? Well, I give them the name that I'm using or a QR code or something, and I say, please go on Facebook, Instagram, whatever, TikTok, subscribe, like the video, whatever it is, and tell your friends, send it to them as well. That is a really decent first step, and here's why. It's not like it's going to change the world immediately, but look at what the requirements are. It's realistic and practical. It's not asking too much for somebody to like something on social media. That's doable. It's also immediate and without delay. I don't have to ask them to go and, when you get home, talk to a loved one about this and make a decision. No, none of that. Just, hey, take a second, hit this QR code, give us a like, give us a subscribe, and that's what we're asking for. Great. Follow us, whatever it is. You're very specific here. This isn't, so next time you're online, make sure that you're talking about qualified immunity. No, don't just go online and talk about it. Go on my forum that I'm creating and telling you how to get to, talk about it on there and share that with other people. That's what I'm asking you to do. The next steps are get signatures, take it to lawmakers, try to change the law. What I was talking about earlier, let's go with a different example. If we say things like, the problem is climate change, CO2 emissions contribute to temperature rises and weather changes. Specifically, 3 problems. Hot weather and crop loss, so that hurts farmers and there's a food shortage. Hot weather melts ice, so that's bad for animals as well as shorelines of places like Lake Michigan. And when we have these temperature rises, we have more severe storms and there's more death and property damage. So then I give this solution. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to change the process. And I've got, we're going to raise awareness, do the petition, get a vote, and then says Biden, that was before. Now it's Trump. He needs to sign that. So here's the kicker. Go over and think about your A, B, and C in the need and make sure it works over here. So if we've got crop loss, hot weather, farmers are being hurt, and food shortages, well, now we have fewer emissions, and so we slow down this change. When we do that, we're going to slow down the melt, like we're going to have slow down the effects like famine, that's the crop loss and hunger, ice melt, erosion, storms, erosion, that's the Lake Michigan shoreline stuff we talked about right there, and that's going to give us a better, longer period of time to live on the earth with fewer storms, right? So I've mentioned the same things in my visualization as I did in my problem, because now they shouldn't be problems anymore if my plan goes through. So again, that's the basic stuff here with Monroe's motivated sequence. I'm going to go back up just briefly because I want to hit this. Remember to start with the attention getter, use a story if at all possible, get us to a cliffhanger, stop, give us the speech, finish the story. Describe the problem for us. What is it? Who's affected? Even if we don't feel like it's a problem, make it feel that way for us. Give us a step-by-step solution to fix the problem or satisfy the need. Give us the way you expect things to look once that problem is solved with your plan. And last, tell us what we can do right now as a first step to making your plan a reality. Okay, so with that, I will wrap up this video. I will then start the next one, which is going to be taking a look at some really, I think, well-known commercials. I hope you're familiar with some of them. If not, it'll be a brief experience. I'm only going to look at 3, but that will be following this one. So stay tuned for that, and I'll see you next time.